My name is Fiona Wells. I was 32 years old when I learned what an empty chair sounds like. I planned my wedding 14 months in advance, hand-addressed every envelope, tracked every RSVP in a spreadsheet I updated at 6 o'clock in the morning before work. 85 invitations. 42 of them went to my side of the family. I sent them 4 months early because I am the kind of person who sends things 4 months early. 2 weeks later, my brother announced his engagement party on the same day. Not a week before, not a week after. The same day, June 15th. And when June 15th came, I walked down the aisle at a farmhouse in the Blue Ridge foothills, and the chairs on my side were almost empty. 3 people out of 42. My dad did not walk me down the aisle. He was at my brother's barbecue drinking a beer in a lawn chair, but he found time to send me a text while I was cutting my wedding cake. "What did you do?" I read it. I smiled, and I put my phone face down on the table. But here's what none of them expected. I had been keeping that spreadsheet, and the day it came out, it changed everything. Welcome back to Hidden Family Revenge. This is where we share stories of people who stood up for themselves when their own family tried to break them down. If this story hits close to home, drop a comment and be sure to subscribe. I need to take you back to understand how I got here. I was 16 years old the first time I filed my family's tax return. My mother handed me a shoebox of receipts and a form she said she didn't understand. She understood enough to sign the check at the end. She just didn't want to do the work. That was my role. The fixer, the translator, the one who sat on hold with the insurance company for 45 minutes so my mother didn't have to. I scheduled my father's dentist appointments. I compared car insurance quotes when my brother's rates went up after his second fender bender. I was 14 when I started organizing holiday dinners because my mother said she was too tired, and I believed her. My brother Garrett was 3 years older and lived a different life in the same house. He got a car for his 16th birthday, a used Honda Civic with a dent in the passenger door, but it was his. When I turned 16, my mother said the family couldn't afford 2 cars. I rode the bus until I bought my own at 19 with money I saved from tutoring. My father, Donald, was a retired postal worker who believed in one principle above all others. Your mother knows best. He said it when Judith decided Christmas dinner would be at our house every year. He said it when she gave Garrett the bigger bedroom. He said it when I asked why my report cards never went on the fridge. Somewhere in college, I started keeping a folder. Not for any reason I could name at the time. Just receipts, transfers, texts, things I helped with, things I paid for. A record of everything no one asked me to keep. I didn't know what it was for yet, but I knew I wanted it. I met Marcus Reed at a financial services conference in Atlanta. He was a software engineer presenting on data security. I was there for a risk analysis panel. We ended up at the same table during the lunch break, and he asked me what I was reading on my phone. I was reading a text from my mother. Garrett's rent was overdue again, and Judith wanted to know if I could help him out this month. $800. I had already sent Garrett $8,000 over the past 3 years, down payment on his car, security deposit on his apartment, a dental bill he said he'd pay back in 2 weeks. That was 11 months ago. Marcus saw my face and said, "Bad news, family?" I said. He nodded like that was a complete answer. Then he asked me something no one in my family had ever asked. "Do they ever call just to ask how you are?" I opened my mouth, closed it, tried to remember. I could not think of a single call from my mother or brother that did not include a request, a complaint, or a reminder of something I owed them. Marcus didn't push. He just handed me a napkin because I hadn't noticed the coffee I'd spilled. His family was different. His mother, Helen, was 63 and sent birthday cards to every person she'd ever loved, including her mail carrier. She included a $20 bill every time, even for adults. Marcus was 34 and still got one. He kept every card in a shoebox in his closet. Not receipts, not transfers, cards. I started tracking things differently after I met Marcus. I opened a spreadsheet on my laptop. One tab for family events, another for RSVPs. It was just how I organized my life. That's what I told myself. Marcus proposed on a Saturday afternoon at the Botanical Garden where we had our second date. He got down on one knee next to the magnolia tree that had been blooming both times we visited. The ring was a simple solitaire on a gold band. He said 4 things. I love you. I respect you. I choose you. "Will you marry me?" I said yes before he finished. I called my family from the parking lot. My mother picked up on the third ring. I said, "Mom, Marcus proposed. We're engaged." There was a pause. Then Judith said, "Oh, that's nice. Did you hear Garrett might be getting a promotion at the dealership?" I waited for something else. A squeal. A question about the ring. Anything. She moved on to Garrett's work schedule and how she hoped he'd finally get his act together. Garrett responded to my text in the family group chat with a thumbs-up emoji. One tap, no words. My father wrote, "Congratulations, sweetheart." It was the warmest thing anyone on my side said. He still didn't call. The next weekend, Helen threw an engagement dinner at her house. 12 people. She made a 3-layer lemon cake from scratch, the kind she'd been baking since Marcus was a kid. The frosting was uneven, and the candles were mismatched, and it was the most beautiful cake I had ever seen. She hugged me at the door and said, "Welcome to the family, honey." I added a new row to my spreadsheet that night. Event engagement announcement, family response column for the Wells side, minimal. I didn't assign blame, I just wrote what happened. That's what spreadsheets are for. Wedding planning took 14 months. Marcus and I chose a restored farmhouse venue in the Blue Ridge foothills, about 90 minutes from Charlotte. Garden terrace ceremony, indoor reception with string lights and long wooden tables. 85 guests maximum. I did what I always do. I made a plan. Save the dates went out 10 months early. Invitations went out 4 months before the wedding. I hand-dressed every single one. Cream-colored envelopes. I taught myself calligraphy from a YouTube tutorial series, practicing on scrap paper at the kitchen table every night for 3 weeks. Each envelope was sealed with a burgundy wax stamp I ordered from a shop in Vermont. It was the most time I had ever spent on anything that was just for me. My mother offered no help. She did not ask about the venue, the dress, the flowers, or the food. Garrett did not respond to the save the date. My father said, "Sounds nice," and asked if there would be parking. Helen was the one who drove with me to 3 venue tours. Helen was the one in the fitting room when I tried on my dress at a bridal shop in Southone. She sat on the little velvet bench and cried when I came out in an ivory A-line with lace sleeves. She pulled a tissue from her purse and said, "That's the one." My mother wasn't there. She had said she was too busy that week. I never asked what she was busy with. I had stopped asking. I mailed 42 invitations to the Wells side. I logged every send date in my spreadsheet. Name, address, date mailed, RSVP status. The RSVP column sat blank for weeks. That should have been my warning, but I had spent 32 years reading silence as normal. 2 weeks after I mailed the invitations, my phone buzzed at 8:43 in the evening. Family group chat. Garrett had posted a photo of himself and his girlfriend Danielle on a rooftop somewhere downtown. Her hand was raised. There was a ring. The caption read, "She said yes. Engagement party June 15th. Save the date. June 15th. I stared at the screen, picked up my spreadsheet notebook from the counter, flipped to the calendar tab. June 15th was highlighted in green. It said wedding. I read the message 3 more times. My chest went tight, but my hands stayed still. I had learned a long time ago that reacting fast in my family meant losing. I texted Garrett privately. No exclamation points, no anger, just the question. "Hey, June 15th is my wedding day. You know that, right?" 3 dots appeared, disappeared, appeared again. His reply came 4 minutes later. "Yeah, but Danielle's family can only do that weekend. It's just a party fee. Your wedding is a whole different thing. It's just a party fee." I read that sentence 5 times, closed my phone, set it face down on the counter, walked to the bathroom, looked at myself in the mirror. It's just a party. My wedding. The one I'd planned for 14 months. The invitations I addressed by hand. The venue I booked with my own savings. The dress Helen cried over. The calligraphy I taught myself at the kitchen table. Just a party. Marcus found me standing in the bathroom, gripping the edge of the sink. He didn't ask what happened. He looked at my face and said, "What did they do now?" I showed him the text. He read it once, set the phone down. "We're not moving the date." He said, "No, I said we're not." I called my mother the next morning, kept my voice level, financial analyst voice. "Mom, you know June 15th is my wedding. Can you talk to Garrett about changing his date? Judith sighed, the kind of sigh that means she's already decided. Honey, your brother just got engaged. This is his moment. You've had your whole engagement to plan. Can't you just be happy for him? I am happy for him. But my wedding is already planned. The venue is booked. Invitations are out. Well, maybe people will go to both. She said it like she believed it. Like a barbecue and a wedding 90 minutes apart on the same afternoon were just 2 items on a Saturday to-do list. Over the next 3 weeks, the RSVP decline started coming. Slow at first. Cousin Amy, Uncle Brian, and his wife. Then faster. Cousin Derek, Uncle Ray, my father's college friend Gary, who I'd invited because my father asked me to. One by one, the regrets column in my spreadsheet filled up. I noticed a pattern. Every person who declined was someone Judith talked to regularly. I confirmed it when Cousin Amy posted an Instagram story from Garrett's engagement party planning meeting. A group of 12 people sitting in Judith's living room, paper plates on the coffee table, my mother in the center holding a clipboard. Then Aunt Rosemary called. Rosemary was my father's older sister, 66, sharp-eyed and direct. Fiona, your mother told me you're having a small private ceremony and you'd prefer just close friends. Is that true? My hand tightened around the phone. No, Rosemary, that's not true at all. Silence on the line. Then Rosemary said, I'll be there, honey. Save me an aisle seat. She was the first person on my side to say yes. One of only 3. 3 weeks before the wedding, I sat at the kitchen table at midnight, laptop open, spreadsheet glowing in the dark. The numbers were final. 42 invitations sent to the well side, 3 confirmed. Aunt Rosemary, my college roommate Sandra, who had no connection to Judith, a childhood friend named Becca who lived in Raleigh and hadn't spoken to my mother in years. Everyone else declined, no response or unable to attend. 39 people gone. Marcus came out in a t-shirt and boxers, rubbing his eyes. He looked at the screen. Didn't need to ask how bad. 3 out of 42. He pulled a chair next to mine, sat down, didn't tell me it would be fine, didn't offer solutions, didn't try to fix it. He just sat there. And for a while, neither of us said anything. Then I closed the laptop. I'm not canceling, I'm not postponing, and I'm not calling her to beg. Marcus nodded. Good. The next day, Helen found out. I hadn't told her the full picture, but Marcus did because he knew I wouldn't ask for help, and he knew his mother would want to give it. Helen made phone calls for 2 straight days. By Thursday evening, 30 additional guests had confirmed. Marcus's extended family, Helen's book club, neighbors from their street who had watched Marcus grow up, a retired couple from Helen's church who said they'd be honored to attend. I opened the spreadsheet, added a new column on the right side, people who showed up. I typed in the names one by one. The list was long, longer than I expected, full of people who had never met me but said yes because Helen asked. That column would become the most important part of the whole document. I planned 42 invitations for my side. 3 people said yes. Imagine opening that spreadsheet every morning, watching the number sit frozen at 3. If someone in your family ever made you feel like your most important day didn't matter to them, tell me in the comments. I read every single one. Stay with me now. What happened on June 15th is the part I still think about. June 15th, 6:32 in the morning. I was sitting in a chair at the farmhouse venue while a hairstylist pinned the last curl into place. The Blue Ridge Mountains were soft and blue through the window, still catching the early light. The air smelled like cut grass and gardenia from the terrace arrangements. Helen arrived at 7. She had driven up the night before and stayed at a motel down the road so she could be there first thing. She carried a small velvet box. This was my mother's, she said. She opened it. Inside was a pearl and silver brooch, no bigger than a quarter. She wore it at her wedding in 1961. I wore it at mine, and now it's yours. She pinned it to the edge of my veil. Her hands were steady. Mine weren't. I checked my phone once. The family group chat was silent. No message from my mother. No thinking of you from my father. No good luck from Garrett. The last message in the thread was from 3 weeks ago. Someone sharing a photo of Garrett's engagement party centerpieces. Plastic wine glasses filled with fake flowers. I closed the chat, closed the phone, set it in my clutch. In the main room, the welcome table was set, the guest book, a framed photo of Marcus and me at the botanical garden, and my calligraphy practice sheet, the one from those late-night sessions at the kitchen table, mounted in a simple wooden frame. A friend had suggested it. I almost said no, but there it was. All those loops and lines and imperfect letters, proof that I had tried. I knew the chairs would be empty. I had 3 months to prepare for that. But knowing something and seeing it are two different things entirely. The ceremony started at 4 in the afternoon. 72 guests, nearly all of them on Marcus's side. My side had 6 people. Aunt Rosemary sitting in the front row in a navy dress clutching a tissue she hadn't used yet. Sandra and Becca, 2 rows behind her, and 3 of Helen's neighbors who had crossed over to my side because the chairs looked too lonesome. Their word, 42 invitations, 6 seats filled. The photographer set up at the back. I could see her adjusting the angle, trying to frame the shot so the empty chairs didn't dominate. But they did. White folding chairs on green grass, each one a name I had written in calligraphy 4 months ago. I walked down the aisle alone. I had decided that weeks before I was not going to ask my father to walk me when he had already chosen where he would be that day. I was not going to manufacture a moment that should have been real. So I walked alone down the stone path past the hydrangeas, past the lemon tree someone had set by the altar for luck. My dress was ivory lace sleeves, and it caught the late afternoon light like something from a painting I had never been able to afford. Aunt Rosemary caught my eye. She didn't wave. She didn't cry. She nodded slow and firm. A nod that said, "I see you. I'm here. Keep going." I reached the altar. Marcus was standing there in a charcoal suit. His eyes were wet. He reached for my hand and held it tight. We said our vows. His voice cracked on the word always. Mine stayed steady. I had been practicing steady for 32 years. The reception was in the barn behind the farmhouse. String lights, long wooden tables, wildflower arrangements in mason jars. The band played soft jazz while people found their seats. And for the first time all day, the room felt full. Our first dance was to a song Marcus had chosen without telling me. A Norah Jones track we danced to in his apartment kitchen the night we decided to move in together. I leaned into him and let the room blur. Then the cake, a 3-tier lemon cake iced in white buttercream with real lavender sprigs pressed into the frosting. Helen's recipe scaled up by the venue baker. Helen had spent an hour on the phone with the woman walking her through the exact ratio of lemon zest to sugar. "Too much zest and it's bitter," she said. "Too little and it's just sugar with ideas." Marcus and I cut the first slice together. People clapped. The photographer crouched low for the angle. That's when my phone buzzed. It was in my clutch on the sweetheart table. I almost didn't check, but the buzz came twice, and something in my chest already knew. I opened the clutch. My father's name was on the screen. One message. "What did you do?" 3 question marks. No greeting. No. How was the ceremony? No. I'm sorry I'm not there. Just an accusation typed in all capitals sent from a barbecue 90 minutes away, where my entire family was eating grocery store cake off paper plates. I stared at the screen, looked up. Marcus was talking to his best man. Helen was laughing with Aunt Rosemary near the dessert table. The lemon cake sat in the warm light, untouched except for our slice. I smiled. Not a smirk, not victory, relief. For 32 years, I had been waiting for my family to show up. In that second, I stopped waiting. I set the phone face down on the table. I never replied. "It's just a party fee." Yeah, I guess it was. Here's what was happening 90 minutes away while I was dancing with my husband. Garrett's engagement party was in his backyard, folding tables covered in checkered paper, disposable cups, a speaker playing a country playlist from his phone. Danielle's parents brought a grocery store sheet cake with "Congrats G&D" written in blue icing. The D was smudged. Judith was in the center of it. She always was. She moved between groups, touching elbows, laughing loudly, making sure everyone saw how happy she was to be celebrating her son. Cousin Amy, the one who had posted the planning meeting photo, was standing by the cooler when she asked the question, "Where's Fiona? Isn't her wedding today?" Judith didn't miss a beat. She tilted her head, smiled warmly, and said, "Oh, she wanted something very small, just her and Marcus. You know how private she is. You know how private she is." She said it with the ease of someone who had rehearsed it. Nobody pushed back. Nobody questioned it. Because Judith had been the narrator of our family's story for as long as anyone could remember. She decided who was generous and who was difficult, who was loyal and who was selfish. And everyone believed her because believing her was easier than asking. My father sat in a lawn chair near the fence, beer in hand. He had texted me 20 minutes earlier. No reply. He checked his phone once more, then put it in his pocket and went back to his potato salad. Garrett stood up and gave a toast, raised a plastic cup to the woman who said yes. Everyone cheered. He did not mention me, not once, not even in passing. I was 3 miles into my first dance at that point. I didn't know any of this yet, but I would. 1 week after the wedding, Aunt Rosemary went to Sunday brunch with extended family. It was a monthly tradition, a booth at a diner off Highway 74, eggs, toast, coffee, gossip. Cousin Amy was scrolling through her phone at the table, showing photos from Garrett's engagement party. Group shots, the backyard, Garrett and Danielle cutting the sheet cake, everyone smiling. Rosemary looked at each photo, counted the faces. Uncle Brian, Cousin Derek, Uncle Ray, and his wife. Her brother Donald sitting in that lawn chair with a paper plate balanced on his knee. All of them. Everyone. On the same day, her niece walked down the aisle to an almost empty garden. Rosemary picked up her own phone, pulled up the wedding photos I'd sent her the day after the ceremony. The farmhouse, the terrace, the string lights, Marcus and me at the altar, and the chairs, my side. 3 people surrounded by white empty seats on a green lawn. She held both phones side by side. One hand, a full backyard, the other hand, an empty aisle. She set her coffee down, looked at Amy across the table. "Amy, did Judith tell you about Fiona's wedding?" Amy nodded. She said Fiona eloped super small, didn't want anyone there. Rosemary's jaw tightened. She was at that wedding. She watched me walk down the aisle alone. She saw me not cry. She saw the 3 chairs that were filled and the 39 that were not. She didn't say anything at the table. Not yet. But she pulled out her phone and took a screenshot of the conversation. Then she went home and sat at her desk for a long time. Rosemary was not the kind of woman who acted without thinking, but she was the kind of woman who acted. 3 days later, Rosemary created a new group chat. She added me, herself, Cousin Derek, Uncle Ray, Cousin Amy, and my father's cousin Louise, who lived in Asheville and had always been kind to me at holidays. She did not add Judith. She did not add Garrett. She did not add my father. Then she typed a message, attached 3 images, and pressed send. The first image was a photo of one of my calligraphy envelopes, the one addressed to Cousin Derek, cream-colored burgundy wax seal, postmarked 4 months before the wedding. The second image was a screenshot of my RSVP spreadsheet, 42 names, send dates, response column, declined, declined, no response, declined, 3 confirmed. The third image was the photo from the ceremony taken from behind the aisle, the garden, Marcus at the altar, and on my side, 3 people. On his side, a full house. Rosemary's caption, "Fiona did not elope. She sent invitations 4 months early. 42 of us were invited. I was one of 3 who came. I was at my desk at work when the notification appeared. I opened the chat and watched 19 minutes of silence. Then the messages came in like a dam breaking. Derek Judith told me it was private. Amy, she said Fiona didn't want a big wedding. Louise, she told me Fiona and Marcus were doing a courthouse thing. Ray, she told me the same." I watched the messages scroll, each one a version of the same lie told in a slightly different voice. My mother had called every one of them individually with a story tailored to whatever would make them feel least guilty about skipping my wedding. I didn't type anything. I just watched. And for the first time, I didn't feel alone in what I knew. The group chat lived for 48 hours before it leaked. Cousin Amy, who was in both my family's main chat and Rosemary's new one, mentioned it to Garrett during a phone call about something else entirely. She didn't mean to start a fire. She said Rosemary started this chat about Fiona's wedding. The way someone mentions weather before moving on, but Garrett didn't move on. He called Judith. "Mom, there's a group chat going around with Fiona's wedding pictures. People are asking questions." Judith called Rosemary within the hour. Her voice was tight and controlled, the way it got when she felt her version of events was being threatened. "What are you doing, Rosemary? Why are you stirring up drama?" Rosemary did not match her tone. "I'm not stirring anything, Judith. I'm correcting a lie." Judith hung up. Then the chain continued. "Judith called my father. My father called me. This was the first time he had dialed my number in 5 weeks. Fiona, what is going on with this group chat? Your mother is very upset." I was standing in my office, door closed, phone pressed to my ear. "She should be dead." Silence. "This is tearing the family apart." "No, Dad. This is what it looks like when the family finds out what actually happened." More silence. "Then can't you just let it go for the family?" I could hear him. I could hear the tiredness in his voice. He was not asking me to forgive. He was asking me to be quiet so he wouldn't have to deal with it. I said something then, something I had been saving without knowing it. "It's just a group chat, Dad." The line went silent. He recognized the rhythm, even if he couldn't place the words. Then he hung up. Over the next 2 weeks, my phone came alive in a way it hadn't since childhood. Cousin Derek called first. His voice was shaky. "Fiona, I'm so sorry. If I'd known, I would have been there. Your mom told me you were doing something small, and I should have called you directly." "I know what she told you," I said. I kept my voice even. Not cold, just even. "I should have checked." "Yes," I said. "You should have." He went quiet for a moment. Then, "Is there anything I can do now?" "You just did it." Amy called next. Then Louise. Then Uncle Ray, who didn't call me. He called my father. "Dawn, did you know about this? Did you know Judith lied to every one of us about Fiona's wedding?" My father's response, according to Rosemary, who heard it secondhand, "That's between Judith and Fiona." Between Judith and Fiona, as if what happened was a disagreement about whose turn it was to host Thanksgiving. I didn't reach out to Judith. I didn't reach out to Garrett. I didn't reach out to my father. I answered the phone when relatives called me. I spoke clearly. I didn't embellish. I told them the dates, the numbers, the timeline. Everything was already in the spreadsheet. I just narrated it. 5 people called to apologize in total. Not the entire 42, but 5 was more than I had expected, and each one had looked up my number on their own. I opened my spreadsheet that night and added a new column on the far right. Called to apologize after finding out. 5 names highlighted in green. The spreadsheet had started as a planning tool. Then it became evidence. Now it was becoming something else entirely. A record of who showed up late, but showed up. 3 months after the weddings, Rosemary called me on a Tuesday evening. She didn't do small talk. Garrett and Danielle broke up. I sat down my coffee. What happened? Danielle found out about the group chat, about what Judith did. She confronted Garrett. Rosemary had gotten the details from Amy, who had gotten them from Danielle's sister. The story went like this. Danielle sat Garrett down at their kitchen table and asked him directly, "Did you know your mother told your sister's entire family not to come to her wedding?" Garrett said, "Yes. And you didn't say anything? You didn't change your party date?" Garrett's answer, according to Danielle's sister, "It's not my fault people chose my party." The same sentence, word for word, the one he had texted me 5 months earlier. "It's just a party fee." That phrase had followed him home. Danielle moved out within 2 weeks. She left the engagement ring on the kitchen counter next to a note that said, "I can't marry into a family that does this." 2 weeks after that, Garrett called me, not to apologize, not to ask how I was doing. He wanted to know if I could help him negotiate breaking his apartment lease early. He said the landlord was being unreasonable, and he knew I was good with that kind of thing. I stood in my kitchen, phone to my ear, and said it flat. "I'm not available for that." Silence. "Fiona, come on. I just need you to look at the contract. I heard you, and I'm not available." He hung up first. I put my phone on the counter and looked at Marcus, who was making dinner across the room. He raised an eyebrow. "Garrett?" he asked. "Garrett?" I said. He turned back to the stove. "Pasta's almost ready." 5 months after the wedding, Judith called me. No text first, no warning, just my mother's name on the caller ID at 7:15 on a Tuesday morning. The first time she had dialed my number since the group chat fallout. I answered because part of me, the part that had been 16 and filing tax returns, still picked up when she called. "Fiona, I need you to help me with my insurance enrollment. Open enrollment ends Friday." No hello? No. How are you? No mention of the wedding, the group chat, the 7 months of silence, just the request delivered the same way she had delivered every request for 32 years, as though I had been waiting for it. "I can't help with that anymore, Mom." A pause. "What do you mean you can't? You always do this." "I always did. I don't anymore." Another pause, longer this time. I could hear her breathing, processing. Not the words, but the tone. She wasn't used to hearing no from me. Not like this. "Fine," she said, and hung up. She called Garrett. Garrett didn't know the difference between an HMO and a PO. He called my father. My father didn't own a computer and hadn't logged into anything with a password since 2014. Judith missed the open enrollment deadline. She was charged a penalty of $380. It was the first time in 18 years she had missed that window, because for 18 of those years, I had been the one filing for her. $380, the cost of losing the family fixer. It was the most measurable consequence yet, and she still didn't call to say she understood why I left. She never said the word I was waiting for. She just wanted the enrollment form. 5 months. And the first call was about paperwork. If you've ever been the one your family only reaches out to when they need something, never just because they miss you, you already know how this felt. Stay with me now. The part that changed everything is next. 7 months after the wedding, Judith called again. This time the request was different. "Your father has a cardiology appointment on Tuesday. He needs a ride." My father had a minor heart condition with medication. Regular checkups every 4 months. Nothing life-threatening, but the kind of thing that needs monitoring. For the last 5 years, I had driven him to every appointment. I knew the cardiologist's name. I knew which floor the office was on. I knew my father liked to stop for a donut afterward at the bakery on 7th Street because he said it was his reward for behaving. "He can call a taxi service," I said, "or Garrett can drive him. Garrett is working. So am I." There was a beat of silence. Not angry silence. Confused silence. Confused. Like Judith was hearing a language she didn't speak. She had spent 30 years issuing instructions and having them follow. The idea that I might be unavailable, genuinely unavailable, not just inconvenienced, didn't compute. She hung up without saying goodbye. My father took an Uber for the first time in his life. He was 61 years old and had never used the app. A younger man helped him download it in the parking lot of the medical building, and the driver turned out to be a retired teacher named Gerald, who talked to my father about fishing for the entire ride. Dad called me afterward, not to complain, not to guilt me. He said, "The driver was nice, Gerald." He showed me how to use the app. It was the most normal thing my father had said to me in 7 months. We talked for 3 minutes. He asked about the weather in Charlotte. I asked about his appointment. He said the doctor was pleased. It was small. It was the closest thing to warmth either of us had managed. Rosemary turned 67 in October. She decided to host a birthday lunch at a Mediterranean restaurant in Charlotte. A private dining room, 18 guests, extended family from both sides of the Wells tree. She called me on a Thursday evening. "I want you there. I also want Judith there. This is my birthday and I'm not choosing sides. I'm not the one who made sides, Rosemary. I know. That's exactly why I need you in that room." I didn't answer right away. I had spent 7 months building a life without my mother in it, and every wall I'd put up was there for a reason. Walking into a room with Judith felt like reopening a wound I had just figured out how to dress. But Rosemary had been the one who showed up. She had been the one who sat in the front row at my wedding and nodded me down the aisle. She had been the one who built the group chat. I owed her this. Or maybe I owed it to myself. "I'll be there," I said. "Marcus, too." Of course. That evening, I opened my desk drawer, pulled out the RSVP spreadsheet, the paper version I had printed months ago for my own records. 42 names, response columns, everything documented. I folded it neatly and put it in my purse, not because I planned to use it, but because I had learned something about my family. They only believed what they could see. Marcus watched me zip the purse. "What's in there?" "Insurance," I said. He smiled. He knew what I meant. 3 days until the lunch. 3 days until I would sit across the table from the woman who emptied my wedding. I wasn't nervous. I was ready. Saturday afternoon. The Mediterranean restaurant had a private dining room in the back, separated from the main floor by a heavy curtain and a low archway. Long rectangular table, white linen, olive oil bread already sliced, water glasses filled, and sweating. Marcus and I arrived at 12:15. Helen had dropped us off at the door. She squeezed my hand before I got out of the car. "Call me if you need to leave early. I'll be at the bookshop around the corner." Judith was already seated near the center of the table where she always placed herself. She wore a cream blouse and pearl studs, and her posture was impeccable. When she saw me, her face reset, a practiced smile, the kind that touches the mouth, but not the eyes. "Hello, Fiona." "Hi, Mom." Short, polite, enough for a public room. Garrett arrived 15 minutes late. He looked thinner than I remembered, dark circles under his eyes. He wore a wrinkled button-D down and sat at the far end of the table without making eye contact with anyone. My father sat between Judith and Garrett, buffer zone. He nodded at me when I came in. I nodded back. Rosemary orchestrated the seating with a hostess's precision. She placed me directly across from Judith, Marcus next to me, Uncle Ray and Derek on my side of the table. Judith flanked by Garrett and Dad. Everybody talked about nothing. The weather had been warm for October. The Panthers were having a rough season. Someone's neighbor got a puppy. Water glasses clinked. Olive oil was poured. Bread was torn and passed. The air was polite, fragile, the kind of atmosphere where everyone knows something is about to happen and nobody wants to be the one who starts it. Rosemary stood up after the salad course. She held a glass of white wine and tapped it once with her ring. The room settled. 18 faces turned toward her. "Thank you all for being here. 67 years old and I still don't feel it." A few laughs. She waited for them to finish. "I want to talk about family for a moment. Not the kind you see on greeting cards. The real kind. The kind that shows up when it's inconvenient." I set my fork down. So did Marcus. He put his hand on my knee under the table. "This year," Rosemary said, "I watched something happen in our family that broke my heart." The room tightened. Judith's hand moved to her wine glass, her fingers curled around the stem. "I went to a wedding this past June, a beautiful wedding at a farmhouse in the Blue Ridge. The bride was radiant. The groom cried during his vows." Rosemary paused, and on the bride's side, there were 3 people. Nobody moved. 3 out of 42 invited. Cousin Amy put her fork down. Uncle Ray shifted in his chair. Derek stared at the tablecloth. Rosemary looked across the room. Not at Judith, at everyone. "Some of you were told that wedding was private, that the bride didn't want you there, that she preferred something small." She let the words sit. I was at that wedding. I watched my niece walk down the aisle by herself, past 39 empty chairs without a single tear. And I'm here to tell you, she wanted every one of you there. She sent invitations 4 months early. She addressed them by hand. Rosemary lowered her wine glass. "What you were told was not true." Silence. 17. People, 1 birthday lunch, and the longest pause I had ever sat through. Judith stood up. Her chair scraped the tile. The sound cut through the room like a blade. "Rosemary, this is not the time or place." Rosemary didn't sit down. "When is the time, Judith? It's been 7 months." My mother's face changed. The practiced smile was gone. Underneath it was something raw. Controlled fury dressed up as indignation. She turned to me. "Is this what you wanted to humiliate me in front of everyone?" I kept my hands in my lap. My voice stayed level. "I didn't plan this. I didn't ask for this. You always play the victim, Fiona. You've always been difficult. You know that." Uncle Ray spoke from the other side of the table. His voice was low and careful. "Judith, You told me Fiona was having a private ceremony. You said she preferred it that way. Judith turned to him. Her mouth opened, closed, opened again. I was trying to protect her. Protect her from what? Rye said. Her own wedding. The table went silent again. The waiter, who had been approaching with a bread basket, turned around and left. Garrett stared at his plate. His jaw was tight. He didn't look up. My father spoke quietly, almost a whisper. Can we please not do this here? No one answered him because doing it anywhere else had not been an option. It had been 7 months of nowhere, and this was somewhere. Judith gripped the edge of the table. Her knuckles were white. I watched her face cycle through options: anger, tears, deflection. She settled on the one she always chose after everything I've done for this family. But Rosemary wasn't finished yet, and neither was I. Rosemary looked at me across the table. Fiona, do you want to say anything? I reached into my purse, pulled out the folded sheet, unfolded it carefully, and laid it flat on the white linen tablecloth. 42 names printed in 2 columns. Send date, RSVP response, and 1 column on the right, reason given for decline. Judith told me not to come, was told it was a private ceremony, didn't know the wedding was happening, said Fiona wanted something small. I didn't read it aloud. I didn't narrate. I just placed it there between the bread basket and the olive oil and let it exist. Cousin Derek picked it up first, scanned the rows until he found his name. His face changed, a slow, sinking recognition. Amy reached for it next, then Ray. I didn't come here to fight, I said. My voice was the same volume it had been all afternoon. I came because Rosemary asked me to. But if anyone wants to understand what happened on June 15th, it's all there. The dates are the dates. The texts are the texts. Judith pointed at the spreadsheet. That proves nothing. You're twisting everything. The dates are the dates. Mom, anyone can make a spreadsheet. Then call the people on it. Ask them what you told them. Judith's mouth opened. Nothing came out. I sat down, took a sip of water. The glass was cold against my fingers. I set it back on the linen and folded my hands. I didn't say another word. The spreadsheet sat on the table for the rest of the meal. People passed it around like a menu no one had ordered. Some read it carefully. Some glanced and looked away, but every person at that table touched it at least once. There was nothing left to argue. The document had said everything I wouldn't. Then my father spoke. He had been sitting between Judith and Garrett's empty-eyed silence for the entire confrontation. He had not moved, had not defended anyone, had not left. But now his voice came out low and rough, like a man who had been holding his breath for 7 months. Fiona, I didn't know what your mother told people. I looked at him. The tablecloth between us felt wider than 90 minutes of highway. You texted me. What did you do on my wedding day, Dad? He flinched barely, but I saw it. Your mother said you'd said something that upset the family, something about not wanting them there, and you didn't call me to ask. No answer. He stared at the water glass in front of him, condensation sliding down the side. Judith cut in sharp fast. Dawn, don't let her manipulate you. And then something happened that I had never seen before, not in 32 years of holidays and arguments and long silences. My father turned to Judith and said, Judith, stop. The room went still. It wasn't loud. It wasn't dramatic. It was the shortest sentence from a man who had spent his entire marriage saying, Your mother knows best. And in that moment, he stopped saying it. Judith stared at him. Her face went white, then red. Then she grabbed her purse, pushed back her chair, and walked out of the room. Garrett stood and followed, his head down, his napkin still in his lap, falling to the floor. My father didn't follow. He stayed in his seat, hands flat on the table, staring at the place where his wife had been. He didn't apologize. Not then, but he stayed. And after 32 years of leaving with her, staying was the loudest thing he had ever done. 2 chairs sat empty, Judith's and Garrett's. The napkins were crumpled where they had been dropped, a wine glass half finished, a bread plate untouched. The restaurant continued. The waiter returned cautiously and refilled water glasses without making eye contact. Someone at the far end of the table cleared their throat. Rosemary broke the silence the way she broke most things directly. Well, happy birthday to me? A laugh moved through the room. Not a big laugh. The kind that comes from the bottom of exhaustion when you've been holding your stomach tight for an hour and finally let go. Uncle Ray turned to me. His eyes were steady. "Fiona, I owe you an apology. I should have called you directly before declining. I took your mother's word and I shouldn't have." "Thank you," I said. Derek spoke next. "Me too." I looked at that spreadsheet and saw my own name in the declined column. "That's on me." Cousin Amy, Louise, a woman named Patricia, who I barely knew, but who said she had always liked me at Thanksgivings. 5 apologies. Not dramatic, not tearful, just direct and quiet, the way things should be said when they're long overdue. My father was still sitting in his chair. He hadn't spoken since he told Judith to stop. But now he reached across the table. His hand landed on mine. Just rested there. He didn't squeeze, didn't pull. I didn't pull away. It wasn't forgiveness, I thought. Not yet. But it was the first honest thing he'd done in 7 months. Marcus put his arm around my chair. Rosemary picked up her wine glass. "Now," she said, "can someone please bring out the cake? I've been waiting an hour." For the first time all afternoon, the laughter was real. 3 days after the lunch, Garrett called. It was late 9. I was on the couch with Marcus watching a documentary about deep-sea creatures. My phone buzzed on the coffee table. Garrett's name. I picked it up. Marcus paused the television. "Hey." His voice was different, quieter, rougher, like he'd been sleeping badly. "Hey, I didn't know Mom told everyone your wedding was private. I swear I didn't know that. But you knew it was the same day, and you didn't change yours." Silence. A long one. I could hear him breathing. I thought it didn't matter that much. My wedding didn't matter that much. That's not what I Garrett. I said his name the way I used to when we were kids, and he was about to do something stupid. "You said it's just a party." Those were your words. The day I married the man I love. And you called it just a party. More silence. Then a sound I wasn't prepared for. His voice cracked. Not a dramatic crack. A small one like a glass that's been sitting too close to the edge for months. "I'm sorry, Fee." I closed my eyes, breathed in through my nose. "I believe you're sorry that things got hard for you. I'm not sure you're sorry for what you did to me. That's not fair." Neither was June 15th. He didn't have an answer for that. I heard him sniffle once, then clear his throat. Can we maybe get coffee sometime?" "Not right now, Garrett. Maybe later, but not right now." I hung up. Not in anger, not in tears, in clarity. The call lasted 4 minutes and 12 seconds. I know because I checked the log afterward. Old habits. 1 week after the birthday lunch, Judith left a voicemail. I was in the shower when she called. Marcus heard the phone ring from the kitchen and let it go to voicemail. When I came out, hair wrapped in a towel, he was sitting on the couch with an expression I couldn't read. "Your mother called," he said. "She left a message." We listened to it together. Speakerphone volume low like the words themselves might be fragile enough to shatter. Her voice was shaky, controlled crying. The kind where you can tell the person practiced it in the car before they pressed call. "Fiona, what your Aunt Rosemary did at that lunch was completely uncalled for. She had no right to do that in front of everyone. You should have been the bigger person. I was trying to make sure your brother felt special on his engagement day. Is that so wrong? I've always tried to keep this family together. I'm your mother. You don't just walk away from your mother." The voicemail ended. I stared at the phone. Marcus sat there with his arms crossed. No apology. Not one. Not for the lies. Not for the phone calls. Not for the empty chairs. Not for the text from Dad. Not for 7 months of silence. Be the bigger person. That phrase again. The universal request of people who never intend to grow. Marcus raised an eyebrow, said nothing. He knew this was mine. I saved the voicemail, opened a folder on my phone I'd created months ago, labeled Boundaries. I filed it alongside screenshots and notes I'd been keeping since the group chat. I did not call back. She called herself my mother, as if that title alone should override everything she'd done, I thought. But a title without action is just a word on a certificate nobody reads. 2 weeks after the lunch, Marcus and I sat on the living room floor with a box of wedding photos. The photographer had delivered them in a linen-bound album with an extra USB drive of digital copies. We spread them on the rug and went through them one by one. The farmhouse, the altar, the string lights. Marcus spinning me on the dance floor while Helen clapped in the background. One photo stopped me. It was taken from behind the ceremony. You could see the aisle, the garden, the Blue Ridge Mountains fading blue in the distance. Marcus at the altar, hands clasped, waiting, and the chairs. On Marcus's side, a full house. Helen in the front row, beaming, clutching that tissue she'd finally used. His college friends, his cousins, his neighbors, every seat taken. On my side, 3 people, Rosemary and Navy, hands folded, Sandra wiping her eyes, Becca staring straight ahead with the fierce concentration of someone trying not to cry, and between them, 39 white chairs, empty. I held the photo in both hands. "You sure you want that one framed?" Marcus asked. He was holding a close-up of us cutting the cake that was objectively more flattering. "There are better angles. This is the truest photo we have." I ran my finger across the empty chairs, each one a name I'd written in calligraphy, each one a person who believed a lie over an invitation. Those chairs taught me more about my family than 32 years of dinners ever did. We framed it, hung it in the hallway between the front door and the kitchen. Every morning I walked past it on my way to make coffee. That evening I opened the spreadsheet on my laptop, looked at it for a long time. Then I closed it. Saved, but closed. I haven't opened it since. 1 year after the wedding, Marcus and I closed on a house, 3 bedrooms, a small yard with a maple tree that turned orange in the fall, a kitchen with enough counter space for 2 people to cook at the same time without bumping elbows. Helen brought a houseplant for the kitchen windowsill, a pose vine in a ceramic pot she'd painted herself. "These are impossible to kill," she said, "even for you two." I was promoted to senior analyst at the firm. I managed a team of 4. My boss said I was annoyingly thorough, which I took as the highest compliment anyone had ever given me. Aunt Rosemary visited once a month. She'd drive down from her place and we'd sit on the back porch with sweet tea and talk about everything except the parts that still hurt. She brought Tupperware containers of casseroles and gossip about church politics. She had become the family I chose to keep. My father called every other Sunday. Short calls, practical. "How are you?" "Good, Dad. How's your heart?" "Doctor says it's fine." We'd talk for 4 minutes, sometimes 5. He never brought up Judith. I never asked. It wasn't much, but he called and I answered. Judith had not called since the voicemail, had not texted, had not visited. I did not know if this was pride or strategy or genuine loss. I didn't ask. Garrett moved to a smaller apartment across town. He worked extra shifts at the dealership. Rosemary told me he had aged since the breakup with Danielle. He didn't ask me for help anymore. Not because he didn't need it, but because he knew the answer he'd get. The family fixer had retired, and the family was learning slowly what that meant. I saw my mother one more time, 14 months after the wedding, a grocery store off Providence Road. I was in the produce section squeezing avocados when I looked up and there she was. She was standing by the lettuce, alone, no audience, no phone in her hand. She looked different, thinner. Her hair was pulled back in a clip, not styled the way she always had it for family events. She was wearing a cardigan I didn't recognize. Her cart had 4 items in it: milk, bread, bananas, a single frozen dinner. Our eyes met across the display case. For a second, just 1 second, Judith looked like a woman who had lost something and did not know how to name it. Her hand trembled on the cart handle. Her mouth softened. Then she spoke. "You should call your father more often. He misses you. Not I miss you. Not I'm sorry. Not I was wrong." She couldn't say it. Maybe she didn't know how. Maybe she'd decided long ago that saying it would mean admitting she'd done it. And admitting would cost more than silence. "He has my number, Mom." She nodded once. A small, tight nod. Then she turned her cart and walked down the cereal aisle without looking back. I stood there for a moment, holding an avocado in each hand, feeling something I can only describe as tired sadness. I wanted her to say it. I think a part of me will always want her to say it, but I stopped needing it a long time ago. My wedding day was supposed to be the worst day of my life, Empty chairs, a text from my father that still sits unanswered in my phone, a mother who chose her golden child over her daughter's biggest day. But here's what they got wrong. They thought the silence would break me. They thought I'd come crawling back, carrying apologies I didn't owe, begging for a seat at a table that was never really mine. Instead, I built a new table, one where every chair was full and every person sitting in it chose to be there. That's my story. 42 invitations, 3 showed up, and the best wedding I could have asked for. If this reminded you to protect your peace, share it with someone who needs to hear it. Drop a comment, hit subscribe, and I'll see you in the next